There's a nice statement in the Bible in Leviticus. Ke etzrach mechem yeche lachem hage itchem va'ach afta lo kamocha. The stranger who travels with you, the sojourner, shall be to you as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. And that seems to me to be central to the 1951 Refugee Convention. And so I find it interesting that people have pointed out that that Andrea Jenkyns' first act, having been elected as the mayor of Lincolnshire, is to condemn those who are the most vulnerable. It's a remarkable feature because I think our duty to immigrants and to the stranger and to people requesting asylum is not about fundamentally the 1951 Refugee Convention Act, which I think is wrong. I think it needs to be updated, and I think any sensible politician would have called for an international convention to redate that that understanding, so that it fits the needs of the 21st century rather than the needs of the middle of the 20th century. A lot of time has passed. 80 years has passed, but this whole attitude is anchored on the biblical demands, not only the biblical demands, also they're found in the Quran. And it's a remarkable feature of the Bible that some of its most powerful moral instructions do not arrive cloaked in abstraction, but come through raw, unfiltered experiences of people fleeing danger, of migrants, exiles, strangers. This is dealt with categorically. And I don't think it's something that you can miss. From Abraham to Christ. The reward to Abraham, God's reward, is a result of Abraham's impulsive philoxenia, kindness to strangers. And the divine imperative is not merely to tolerate the outsider, but to welcome, to protect, to serve them. And this ethic, which is rooted in ancient soil, it's also there in the nomadic culture, and it's there in the myths of ancient Greece, where Zeus and Hermes visit shepherds, and they're given hospitality, and the individuals who are giving this hospitality don't realize that they're entertaining gods. And this gives sacred weight to the principles we now enshrine in modern international law, not least in the 1951 Refugee Convention. So, beginning with the tent of Abraham, this archetypal nomadic story in Genesis 18, Abraham looks up from the heat of the day and sees three strangers approaching, and without knowing who they are, he runs. He doesn't amble slowly and look for his law book. He runs to meet them. He bows low and he says, Adonai. He greets them as nobles. Adonai, imna matzi chen benicha al nata avo me'al avdecha. My Lord, or my lords, if I found favor in your eyes, do not pass your servant by. And he offers them rest, food and water. He kills the little calf that he's been saving for a rainy day, and only later does he realize that he's entertained angels, messengers of the Lord, or in the Christian understanding, typified by the icon of Andrei Rublev, he has entertained God himself, the Trinity. And this passage anticipates the later admonition in Hebrews 13:2, tis philoxenias me epilanthesiste the taftes ga elathon tines genisantes angelos. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for in doing so some have entertained angels unawares. In other words, every stranger is potentially God. Every stranger is potentially divine. You see Christ in everyone. It's not sentimental theology, it's the command conduct, and it's something that St. Francis of Assisi, of course, put into practice. In Exodus, and he and St. Seraphim put into practice the idea is not only every strange human being, it's every strange creation, every strange piece of creation, every strange creature. In Exodus 22:21, we read, V'ger lo tona velo tichatzenu kigerim hayetim be'eretz mitzrayim. You shall not wrong or oppress the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And this moral memory of suffering, of being the outsider, the alien, the unwelcome, is not to be forgotten, but is institutionalized into law, into ethics, and into compassion. So if we then move on to Christ, in Matthew 25, the parable of the sheep and the goats makes explicit what was implicit in the Abraham story. Jesus says, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. When did we see you a stranger? Asked the puzzled righteous, and he replies, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of these, the least of my brethren, the least of my brothers and sisters, you did it for me. And Christ identifies with the migrant, the prisoner, the hungry, the naked. The Greek word used is xenos, stranger, foreigner. From this, we derive the modern word xenophobia, but in Christian terms, and I think in Jewish terms, xenophobia is heresy. It's theologically insupportable. And the principle is deeply enmeshed in the Christian concept of ordo amoris, the order of love. As St. Augustine teaches, love is not merely feeling, but rightly ordered action. To be a good person is to do the right thing. To be happy is to do the right thing. Ordo est amoris. And in fact, it goes back to Aristotle. Aquinas later clarifies, we are to love all, but with ordered intensity. Yet that ordering doesn't excuse indifference to the needy stranger. Indeed, the Good Samaritan story in Luke 10 rebukes the very notion that proximity or kinship determines moral priority. Yet today we see this principle inverted by stupid populists like J.D. Vance, and he proposes this perverted ordo amoris in which Americans must love Americans first, and migrants are dehumanized, reduced to burdens, threats, or tools for political leverage and afterthought. This is not love in order, this is love in disorder, a gnarled parody of Christian ethics. And the 1951 Refugee Convention was drafted in the smoking aftermath of Auschwitz and in the conscious memory of those who were turned away, and it enshrines in secular language what Scripture insists in sacred text. You do not ask a stranger for their passport before you ask about their pain. And we return then to this radical truth. Our response to the refugee is not charity, it's a test of our moral clarity. And to go back to Leviticus 19:31, the stranger who travels with you shall be as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. And the idea that citizens come first may win votes, but it cannot win the kingdom. The migrant is not a threat to be contained, but a Christ to be served. And any Christian politics that forgets this ceases to be a Christian. So we shouldn't ask who we're allowed to love or who we're allowed to help. We should instead ask whether we dare look to the stranger who may be an angel or Christ or God himself and then turn him or her away. We cannot. This is our opportunity to do good. And the 1951 Refugee Convention tried to reassure us that this was the right thing to do, and for it to be perverted by J.D. Vance and Suella Braverman and Priti Patel and these twits who think that they can fiddle around with the wording without looking at the bedrock on which that 1951 Refugee Convention is drafted. The bedrock is the judeo-christian and Islamic principle of care for the needy, charity, and it's also a recognition that we fell below the standard by refusing asylum to so many Jewish people who turned to us for help. Yes, we took in the kinder transport, but so many people were rejected simply because they didn't have the passports and the bits of paper that were necessary for travel at the time. So many people ended up in Auschwitz, ended up dying because of our bureaucracy. And the 1951 Refugee Convention was an attempt to get round that bureaucracy, to put the principles that underpin our legal systems, that is the judeo-christian tradition, to put that first. And it constantly shocks me that this has been so perverted in the last few years. And Andrea Jenkyns should be excoriated for making that perversion the centerpiece of her acceptance speech.